timely, insightful, discussion and analysis of economic trends and markets. From Southern California to Sacramento, featuring business and political leaders, unique field reports. From Orange County and the campus of Chapman University, this is the Chapman Business Report.
Welcome back to the Chapman Business Reports, our weekly look at business, financial markets, and a special focus on the regional economies of Southern California. I'm Pete Weitzner. I head up the broadcast journalism program here on actually a couple of blocks west of the main campus where we do the show from at the Dodge College of Film and Media Arts. Just behind me, the boss plows the numbers, just did for his 34th annual economic forecast over at Beckman Hall. And immediately behind us, that's the Global Citizens Plaza. Could have seen Colin Powell there recently when he came to dedicate that plaza. It's one of our shows where we delve into a few topics in depth. And boss, I want to start with, we are also doing the show just the start of 2012. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year to you.
Everybody. Yes.
And we've got, I think you may have noticed, a little election going on and a race for the GOP nomination.
Yeah.
Your forecast said we'd have about 2.5%. I'm bumping
Roughly,
it up a little.
Yeah.
Maybe between 2 and 2.5.
Could be, yeah.
Growth. All the candidates, they have economic plans. Herman Cain, maybe most notably, no longer in the race with the 999. Any that strike you that, based on what you believe as having been in this game for a long time, that if enacted, maybe not in 2012, obviously be late for that, but in their term of office, if they were to be elected, would boost those numbers?
You know, when you listen to them, at least up to now, I have not heard anything specific. I mean, you said 9-9 plan.
Right,
but
that was specific.
If you put that aside, which obviously is not running anymore, everybody is saying basically things in general terms. That is, we are for lower taxes, we are for lower regulation, we want to cut the deficit, we want to balance the budget. Now, how? That is not what I haven't heard. All of these 4 items I've named, they're actually very good. I mean, we want to, especially regulation. You know, regulation is part of major problem for anti-growth, you know, for the economy. But where is the specific? How are you going to cut the deficit? Who's going to pay for it? At the same time, they want to boost like military spending. So there's lots and lots of contradiction here.
Well, you can do that in a campaign, right? You can say you'll make the cuts, but not have to come up with the revenue.
Exactly. So I don't know really who's going to go, you know, all the way and come up with the bill.
I mean,
but whoever is going to be nominee, which at this point at least it looks like Romney, they have to come up with something specific, and then we can judge it much better.
Sure, and we look like we're on the cusp of a 4th straight $1 trillion deficit for our fiscal year.
I mean, we had
3 in a row set a record.
Yeah, we were over 1.5, 1.4 trillion. This year is going to be 1 trillion. Obviously,
even with the defense cuts, we'll be over $1 trillion.
Yeah, some of the defense cut is not going to kick in really, you know, in this fiscal year. But we have to keep in mind, the only way you can cut deficit, you know, you have to rely on the economy. No, you have to rely on the economy.
Of course.
Economic growth is going to bring more tax revenue, and that shrinks the deficit. If you want to take discretionary action, that is cutting the deficit, where are the biggest spending? It's in defense and then entitlement, Social Security and Medicare.
And not even Republicans would be more likely to mention, say, Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid than the Democrats. Yeah. But they're not even really talking about it.
Nobody's talking about it.
President Bush tried it, he got it.
But you know, Pete, it's very interesting.
As an economist, would you favor that, though? Raise the age, cut the benefits, means tested, all that?
All that. Mean tested, raise. But it's still, again, like when it comes to healthcare costs, how can we make that efficient? How can we control the costs, whether it's on the private sector?
Healthcare spending's down, by the way.
It is, but that's mostly when you aggregate the, what we call elective surgeries. That's quite shrunk. Now, something is interesting, though. Most people look at presidents and they blame them for bad economy. They give them credit for good economy. But, you know, since World War II, we had 11 recessions. 11 recessions. And then I did a little study just for fun of it to see who was the president during these recessions. Interesting. You want to try? How many Republicans versus how many Democrats? Just quick.
I'm going to guess based on the way you're talking that it would even out. 6 and 5, and I don't know who would have.
9-2.
9-2.
We had.
And you're going to tell me it was Republican, aren't you?
9 presidents were Republican when we had recession, and 2 were Democrats. And the only 2
when they started.
That is exactly the very good one.
Because, for instance, President Obama, when we're growing now, But I mean, it's no longer the Great Recession. What is it called now? Someone has a good line for it. But okay, but when they started, you're saying 9?
No, it's very, very good point here. This is not pinpointing when they started, when they ended. It's just basically when did recession hit, and who was the president at that time.
President Bush, first Bush was a recession, but then when he left office, we had 5% growth.
Yes, but recession started in 2007. So
no, I'm saying the first one.
Oh, first Bush, yeah, it was recession started 1990, in the middle of his term.
Right.
But then when you look at the current Bush the son, he started 2000. We had a recession 2001, and
after 9/11,
it finished with the recession of 2007.
Right, so he gets credit for two.
Yeah, and you look at Carter. See, that was really bad because the recession started in 1980. That was his end of presidency. So you could say, what did he do during those 4 years that led the economy into a recession? But then again, as you go back, Nixon, recession of 1973. That was almost the end of Nixon's term. That was his second term before his resignation. You go further back, I mean, Truman, 1948. He was just basically starting, it was starting his first term as an elected president. So it's very difficult to say one party, one president is going to do good for the economy or not. But having said this, presidents can set the tone for policy. What are the policies? Tax policy, spending policies, regulation. And obviously...
okay, but speaking of setting tone, I never want to make this a political show. There's plenty of those. But a criticism certainly of President Obama is the tone he sets. And I have friends in business who tell me that they can't recall a president who talks, not down to business, who talks down the economy and at times they feel makes a boogeyman of what almost all Americans have always taken pride in, the free market as this president.
Exactly.
Would you concede their point?
I agree. I mean, when you look at the economic issues, some of the issues that he raises are valid issues, but the tone of the language and pinpointing where the problem is, I think sometimes it goes extreme, and pinpointing business formation, entrepreneurship, making money as being kind of a sin, and that's a mistake. But some of the stuff that he's talking about are realistically, our middle class is shrinking, the real income is going down, and healthcare cost is going high or expensive as a portion of economy.
Does he get credit for the fact that he chose to save Detroit? And we look at the bright spots in the economy right now, and one of the biggest ones is Detroit.
Yeah, but the reason he saved it, you could attribute it to the union and the role of unions there, and why not saving another industry? So the point that I'm trying to make, and
doesn't matter who wins?
At the margin, yes, but I don't think any president can do much in a short period of time. What sets really economic direction, more than anything else, is the action by, obviously, private sector, which, how much growth potential they see, what kind of a benefit they see in expansion of their operation, what kind of a regulation they're dealing with, and the central bank. Because central bank is extremely important. If you look at some of these cycles that I just mentioned, 11 recession, we did have some cycle that I believe was caused mainly by bad actions of Federal Reserve.
Look at Ron Paul.
Exactly. Look at 2001 recession. We came out of it, and then Greenspan and his company kept the rates low, and at the same time, regulators were asleep, and we went through this boom.
Well, how would you assess what the Fed has done here? Because there are those who say that they can do more, and they should have directed more of the assistance toward Main Street than Wall Street.
I don't think so. See, the Fed's function, really, the role is control of interest rate and money supply. So, I mean, how could you direct it to Main Street versus, Wall Street? What they did, they lowered the interest rate to stimulate borrowing and lending, and at the same time, they pumped lots of money into the system to help the housing market. But again, what makes me worried, everybody now is looking at them and say, let's do more, pump more money. And I think that, again, I hope they won't do it, because over long run, that could be another cause of a major problem. It might push the inflation much higher and really erode our purchasing power. So going back again to election, first, obviously, we have to hear more detail. And secondly, when we hear the detail, we have to see really, are we achieving reducing the deficit by really addressing the tax reform, not just cutting taxes? And how are we going to reduce government spending, and which components of government spending is going to be reduced.
Well, this could be a distinction, though. And then we'll move on. I mentioned housing. I want to talk about that, whether we might finally start to see a recovery, especially for home builders. But a number of candidates, not all, a number of candidates saying, we got to focus on manufacturing. Still, they say, look at this country, and they say your country's got to make something. Yes. And there's some things you can do with tax policy, and obviously there's things you could do along the tariff line. But a lot of other economists say, that train has left the station. We are not a manufacturing economy. We're a service economy, and we need to focus on that. And this trend, that's one of the reasons we have a high unemployment rate, is those jobs have been leaving for the last 10, 20 years, covered up by the internet boom, covered up by the false housing boom. So would you say that the ones who say let's focus on manufacturing are misguided, or no?
I mean, the focusing maybe is a strong word, and plus government again taking action favoring one industry versus another. I'm not for it. However, the market forces are working. I mean, if you talk to some manufacturers now, and I deal with some of the CEOs, they are leaving China. See, when they moved to China, the gap, the cost saving that they had versus operation, especially in California or even Arizona or Mexico, was 50%. Now, that saving is shrinking to about 10, 15%. Plus, there is lots of bribery, lots of corruption, lots of regulations.
Would they come back here?
Yes, I have talked to some that they're bringing business back. And in fact, GE just recently brought some operation back to Ohio. So what I'm saying is
a right
the market,
to work state, I think.
Yeah, market forces are going to work out. Now, are we going to get assembly line to put some, I don't know, TV together? No, because our labor cost is so expensive. But when it becomes a little bit sophisticated operation, when you take the transportation cost, all the other issues into account, you come back. So going back again, what government can do really to help manufacturing sector, it's regulation. I mean, that's one area that we are surprised they're not taking the steps. Some of these businesses that left, they left because environmental issues, about zoning, labor, overtime rules, a whole bunch of other regulations that is doing cost of manufacturing much higher here than anywhere else. And then there's a competition among the states.
Sure.
That's where really we can focus. And believe me, if we do that, the market is going to correct itself. Now, we're not going to get all those jobs back, but we're going to get some growth in manufacturing sector. There's no question on that.
Okay, all you candidates out there, take heed of that advice. So some now call this no longer a jobless recovery, because we're starting to get some jobs, but a homeless recovery.
Yes.
Meaning, I think if you look at the numbers, new home sales, it was the lowest, was it in 50 years?
Yes.
300,000, the lowest in 48 years, 1963.
Yes.
So one assumes we'll do better in 2012, but the problem is just so much inventory out there.
Yeah, see, there is again misguided perception here, or misguided policy in effect. Federal Reserve and everybody else think that we should get huge home sales because mortgage rates are low.
Right.
This is wrong. This is not going to happen. Because if you look at in the 80s, mortgage rates were 8, 9, 10%. We were getting home sales. We were getting appreciation in prices. So what's the key factor that everybody's missing here?
You have to have a job.
Jobs.
You have to qualify.
Jobs and lending. And that's where we have the problem. See, it's a demand versus supply. We have large number of inventory of unsold homes. We have large numbers that are still in the pipeline, whether by Fannie and Freddie and other financial institutions, which they have to come to the market, somehow get clear. Foreclosure process or short sales. So inventory is big, it's sitting here, and the demand is anemic. Why demand is anemic? Because we're not creating as many jobs, which would lead to household formation, family formation, and demand for
They say in markets
buying.
like Vegas, housing is 50% undervalued, however they determine that.
Yes.
50% undervalued.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, if you look at affordability, for example, look at Orange County or even Inland Empire. If somebody has a median
We're,
family...
I think, an undervalued
We're
market.
undervalued by fundamentals.
Right.
In Inland Empire is
Orange
a very
County,
good
undervalued.
example. Inland Empire is amazing. We just did a study. If you have a median family income in Inland Empire, which is about $60,000 for a family, median, and buy a median price home, put 20% down, your interest payment, property taxes, and basically everything you pay for that house is 11% of your income.
11%, and in the boom times it was up to 50.
Oh, for us was over 50. In Orange County, there was over almost 35%.
So 11% you're using tax benefits in there.
Tax benefits, everything
still,
in there.
That's historically low.
Historically low. But
your rent would probably be about 20%.
Oh, more than that, yes. So why people are not buying? Goes back to jobs.
Yeah.
You know, the person who lost his job now is living probably his parents, with family, or doesn't have the income barely to survive, so they're not coming out and buying. So to get really decent across the board housing recovery, we need jobs. Now the question is, which areas are going to perform better when it comes to job creation? When you look at California, coastal areas are doing much better. Orange County and even West LA, and go up to
down to San Diego and up to Northern California.
Up to Northern California. Inland is not doing as well, and that's why the home prices, home sales is depressed, partly because those economies are less diversified. See, the coastal areas are relying on export market, diversified economy, professional business services, healthcare. Inland counties, including Inland Empire, they're relying mostly on construction, or they used to. It's not there, and retail. And that's not really creating as many jobs to create housing demand to absorb that inventory. So to get really true recovery in housing market, we have a few more years to go to really pick up in job creation to create that demand. But I know the housing optimism, I guess the builders, they're
a little up.
Yeah, they're a little up.
I've noticed that even as we came out to record this show, on one day, housing stocks as a group were up. Of course, they're so low. William Lyon, a regional builder, filed for bankruptcy, but there's a bet going on that some of these guys are survivors in the right markets, which really what you want to be is spread out.
Like, for example, Las Vegas market. You just mentioned Las Vegas market. What's the problem there? Job growth is absent. They're not building any new hotels, and even other hotels are operating below, 100% capacity. And they're now competing with Singapore's casino and Macau casino. So who's going to buy those homes or rent it? It's absent. But coastal counties, and that's probably, and some other areas of the country, the builders that survived, now they have lands that are relatively cheap on their book, and if they're smart and target the market, they can make money, and that's what the stock market is looking at.
Speaking of California, so the governor out with his budget, and we've talked in prior shows about the wisdom or not of this tax increases that'll have on the ballot or keeping these taxes going. But he, unlike a lot of other states, he wants to spend money on, for instance, the biggest one. I mean, he's got a number of initiatives, green jobs are the biggest. He wants to spend money on this high-speed rail.
Yeah.
When most other states are, that's the last of their concerns.
Yes.
They're trying to cut, live within their means.
Yes.
What do you think about this?
Well, I'm going to come in a little bit in his defense, because he's going to spend money on this fast train or whatever they call it, but it's going to be a bond issue. It's not going to be basically coming from the operation.
Right.
So don't mix it up with the regular budget. However, like green jobs, we have seen just example of one firm that got, what was that, $300 million, $500 million and went bankrupt. See, this is where the problem is when government.
You're in our backyard, Fisker,
when government, whether it's a
they're doing all right.
Whether it's a state or local, wants to really pick one industry versus another industry and try to pick up losers and winners. The best the governor can do is change those fundamental changes that he's not doing, addressing growth of his spending over time, changing retirement system, addressing the regulation issues, make more business-friendly environment in California.
They just formed a panel to do that in San Diego. At the municipal level, San Diego's not a small, but San Diego County, you think that's a good idea? I mean, we've seen that over time and again,
Yeah, but see, they're competing.
Their own economic, right.
But at the
margin. At least it sends a signal.
Exactly. At the margin, all of these things help. But when you look at the state as a whole, there's certain rules that are state laws that, cities cannot change, counties cannot change, minimum wage. I mean, how could you change that?
AQMD, all that stuff.
Or working over 8 hours, you have to get overtime. These are state laws. So there's certain things they can do at the state level.
That'd be one. I think most people agree. That's one California's got to change.
Exactly. We have to change, even workman comp and they're putting cap on the limit of damages. If we don't do these fundamental changes, nothing is going to get really change fundamentally to spur growth. Sure, we would move with the national economy, but still, we used to be leader when it came to economic growth and entrepreneurship, investment, venture capital funds. And all of these are lacking. People are looking at different areas because we're too costly.
Thank heavens for the weather. Once again, the Rose Bowl, 80 degrees. People will still want to move here, and hopefully some businesses will want to locate here. When we return, you like still photography, boss? You good at it?
I'm not good at it, unfortunately.
We'll show you a Chapman student who's made a business out of it, and it's an obsession. April Lynn Newman will have that report when we return on the Chapman Business Report. We are back on the Chapman Business Report. Pete Weitzner joined by the boss, Dr. Esmael Adibi. Time for our student feature stories. Here's a great April Lynn Newman only had to walk to another level on her dorm to find a student with a passion, obsessive passion, and already making some profit for photography. Take a look.
Cool. Hey.
Nathan Warden, a junior at Chapman University, has a lot more to him than just what meets the eye. In fact, the place he may be most comfortable is behind the eye of a camera. Nathan arrived as a film production major, but soon discovered that photography clicked better for him. He got his first digital camera for Christmas in 2007, and his passion has grown since then. He is now the event photographer at Dodge College of Film and Media Arts, and a photographer for the Panther. He also takes many photos of the residents in Henley, which he often uses when he updates his Photo of the Day page on Facebook.
Nathan's a very talented photographer.
Every picture is so fun and so gorgeous, and I really like his photography.
There are funny ones, there are cool ones, there are some where he just does interesting things with like people hanging upside down off of ropes and just stuff that other people just don't regularly do.
Very artistic. He's got a good imagination, so it shows in his photographs.
Nathan exhibits his love for photography through the unique setup in his dorm room. He spent upwards of 30 hours putting up photos on each of the walls.
I've never seen anything like it in my life. I think it's pretty awesome to do.
First time I saw it, it was a bit of a shock. I didn't expect. I saw his door, and that was, you know, enough for me to see already. I thought that he was a pretty interesting guy. And then when I went inside for the first time, it was just mind-blowing. It must take so much time, and I think it would be actually kind of stressful inside that room all the time.
Sometimes people ask me, is it creepy to live in a room with like hundreds of eyes staring at you? And I'm like, well, not really, because like Brenton's my friend, and I remember we were playing around with our speed lights when we were taking that photo. And I remember I was with my little brother on that one, and it snowed that day, and we were, you know, throwing snow at each other. It's like, why would you be creeped out if you know, like, oh, that was a happy moment, that was a happy moment. It's just kind of fun.
Last year, Nathan officially created his own photography company.
I want to be able to support myself with photography. Like, I'd love to work for myself and have my own company. And so, you know, it just made sense to, you know, kind of have something like that right now.
He is also a photographer for a company called Happy Photos. Nathan shoots weddings, headshots, and portraits in addition to photos of and with his friends. When asked what it takes to get a good shot, Nathan asserted that it's all about comfort.
The main goal is just to make them feel like themselves with you. So if you can get them to laugh, or if you can get them to start having fun, that's, you know, mission accomplished.
Nathan will often use himself to test out techniques.
So a lot of times, since if I'm the only one around with my camera, I'll end up taking a photo of myself, and then like I'll be able to repeat that same thing. Like there's this one photo of like water hitting my face. I like set it up on a tripod, self-timer, figure out how to do the technique, and then once I got it down on myself, I was able to do it to other people. So a lot of times I'm my own guinea pig.
Nathan strongly believes that old photos can be looked upon as benchmarks.
So like I look around the room and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's the event where I realized that when you're indoors and having a really high ISO means that you're gonna have to have like a pretty slow shutter speed. But if they're moving really fast, then you're gonna have to compensate with the aperture, and like you're just gonna have to figure that combination out. Like, oh, I remember that event. That's when I learned that.
When he graduates, Nathan hopes to be a professional photographer. Overall, he wishes to spread joy through his pictures.
He loves to be able to capture these moments that people can look back on for the rest of their lives and be so happy with that one moment.
Because he said everyone wants to remember fun things in their life, and so what he wants to do with the rest of his life is help other people remember those fun things.
When I graduate, really what I want to just do is spread happiness through photos. Like, it's cheesy, but I would really just love to make people's lives better by showing them how cool they are.
One of Nathan Warden's goals is to have his photos published in a professional newspaper. This upcoming semester, he'll be interning for the Orange County Register, whom he aspires to shoot for. Reporting from First Floor Henley West, this is April Lynn Newman, Chapman News.
That's some terrific work in there. Makes you wish you had a skill like that, right?
Maybe you should start selling tickets and everybody can go and watch these pictures.
Unbelievable. It's everywhere in his dorm room. Good for him. My thanks to the boss, as always, for his great insights on the economy, and to Jeff Cole, class of 2001, Jeff Cole Productions. His team puts on the Chapman Business Report. Mostly thanks to you for watching our show. I'm Pete Weitzner, back again next week. Another look at business, the financial markets, and a special focus on the regional economies of Southern California. We'll see you next time.
Funding for this program was provided by Chapman University.